And we're live, I think. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Happy Sunday to you guys. Let me see who's here today. Sunday morning, bright and early. Hope you guys are doing well. We have a really great show lined up for you. I got a lot of things to talk about today. And looking forward to going over all the gear information with you guys. So first of all, give me a thumbs up. Just let me know if the signal is a little too hot, because it might be a little hot. Can you give me a thumbs up if the sound's okay, guys? Would appreciate that. In the meantime, I'm going to keep talking. If there's any issues, you guys let me know, all right? So welcome to Sunday Live, Addicted to Gear. This is show 63. And we're getting there, guys. It seems like summer's trying to get started. We're getting some decent weather here. Still, we got a bunch of snow last week. And it's funny because we were like getting some really nice wet weather. I was ready to, get all the stuff going for summer. And we get nailed with, I think it was like 5 centimeters of snow. And it's been cold and yucky ever since. And of course, these are the days that I have off. So instead of being able to enjoy my time outdoors, I'm stuck inside. But that's okay. We're going to make the best of it. And the show must go on, as they say. So the first thing I want to talk about today, and I want to welcome all you guys to the show, and I'll go in and say hi to everybody and see who's here today. I know we have all of the early risers that are normally here. So Cushman, Jack Collins, Wayne is here. Who else is here? Cushman, I'll get to your questions in a second here. Jack is here. Gospel of Mark. You guys are jumping right in with some new gear talk. So for the guys that have been here previously, you know how it works. If any of you got new gear, post it in the chat. We're going to get around to it, and we're going to share that with everyone and celebrate the new gear. For those of you that are new to the channel, don't be shy. Post your gear, things that you're looking for, things that you got, things that you're maybe considering getting rid of. Post it in the chat, and we'll talk about that as we get to it. So John's here as well. Fat Philosopher, good morning. Let's see here. Alan, Quicksilver, Tonefish, Christian is here as well. Bruce, Dan of New Jersey. And guys, don't be shy. I know you guys, some of you guys are just lingering in the background. Don't be shy to say hello. Nobody's going to bite you here. Cowtown's Customs. Keith, Dan, and we'll say hi to the rest as you guys trickle in. I know some of you guys are not early risers. You roll out of bed a little bit later, and that's fine. You grab your coffee and tune in, and we'll get the chat on the road. So let me just go through some of the early questions that we got here, because I know some of you jumped right in this morning. And if I don't get to your questions, it's not because I'm ignoring you. Just I might miss it in the chat. So just ask it again as I go through. I'll get to it. So here we have a question or a statement. Hot rodded my Bugera Vintage 5 with 2 Russian tubes and an Eminence hemp speaker sound so much better, more like a Fender style amp. So that's Cushman saying that. And I totally agree that amplifiers can be tweaked or modded very effectively with a speaker change. That's probably one of the things that you can do to your amps to make it sound very different. I mean, think about it. It's like, a stereo system. If you change your speakers and, you have like speakers that are 4 inches, woofers that are 4 inches, and all of a sudden you go to full range speakers that are larger, they'll definitely change the character of your amp. So that's definitely something that you can do. And yeah, the tubes are always a great place to start with amps, because a lot of the amps that are sent out normally have like groove tubes in them or something like that, which are not necessarily the best choices. I mean, they're stock tubes which will do the job, but you can always tweak and mix and match and get the sound that you're after. So why were you looking at changing the sound of the Bugera? Were you not happy with the sound as it was? You mentioned that it sounds more like a Fender style amp, so I guess it gave you a bit more top end or opened it up a bit more. So I'm just curious as to why you started to try and mod that amplifier. Jack says the only new gear I got this week were speaker stands for my JBL7 II. Speaker stands are always a good thing. I like to keep most of my gear off the ground as much as possible, just in case. You never know. Disaster might strike for whatever reason, and the last thing you want is for your stuff to be underwater in a flood, or should you know, the water tank break or something like that. Knock on wood. It's always best to keep your guitars and gear off the ground if possible. Gospel of Mark, no new gear for me this week. Got some borrowed gear. TC Helicon mic mechanic pedal for vocals. That's pretty nice, man. I mean, next to buying gear, the best gear is free gear. So if you can borrow gear and get to enjoy it for a while, that's always a really great thing. It always gives you the ability to test out the gear, not necessarily having to spend anything. And sometimes you might find that, you know, although the gear is cool, maybe it's not exactly the thing you were looking for after all. And it's always best to find that out before you spend more money. John says, I guess it will be morning in 2 minutes. It's nearly midnight in Melbourne. Well, hey, John, thank you for tuning in. I know it's not always easy to stay up and keep your eyes open when you're listening to shows like this late at night, but I appreciate the effort, my friend. Fat Philosopher says, good evening. Nice to see you here, Fat Philosopher. He says that he bought the Mustang Micro you all pressured me into. She's blaming us now. So how do you like it so far? What are your first impressions, Fat Philosopher? Are you digging it? Is it a keeper? Is it worth the money? Give us your feedback on that. I wanted to say, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I changed a couple of things in the background. Right now, I was kind of not happy with the layout, and I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how I could optimize the space here. So as you see, I moved my guitars. I actually picked up another one of these Hercules racks. I only had one, and I was using the stands, and I'm not really happy with the stands, so I figured I'd double up. I got this Hercules stand, and I have the old Hercules stand. So I have some of my guitars here, and I moved my amps around, so now I don't have them all placed over here because it was looking cluttered, and I kind of like the idea of keeping things a little bit symmetrical. So I have my Brunetti Pleximan. I put my 212 cabinet in a vertical configuration here. My pedals, my pedal board is at the bottom here. And the rest of my amps are kind of on this side now, which is not really practical for playing because, I don't know, I don't feel the layout is great, but it's neater at least, and it keeps things a little bit less cluttered. But definitely I'm trying to work things out a little bit and see if I can get things rearranged a little bit better, just for convenience. When things are messy, it just slows things down when you're recording videos, and you got to get things out of the way. So I figured I'd try and clean up a little bit, so to speak. Hello from Germany. I'm sitting in my garden enjoying the sun and a glass of Italian wine while I'm watching Tony's Sunday live show. Life can be so wonderful. Life can be wonderful, Christian. Take advantage, my friend. Great. It's too early for me to have wine here, but I'm glad you're enjoying it over there. I appreciate you guys tuning in from all over the world, no matter where you guys are. Let's see here. So before I get to some other questions, I wanted just to say I'm going to mention this a couple of times during the live show just so that you guys are aware. In case you missed the last video that I posted last night, I decided, as I had mentioned to you guys, and I gave you guys a little early warning on this, I'm going to be giving away the Mighty Plug from NUX. I did the video yesterday, posted it online, so you guys all have the ability to win this really cool gadget, and I did a full review on the Mighty Plug, so if you haven't checked that out and you're not sure what it actually does, check out the video. I think it's in the link. I posted it in the link on the video that I posted yesterday on the contest and giveaway. So the contest, pretty straightforward, guys, nothing crazy to do. I know some of you guys already entered the contest. If the rest of you guys haven't entered it, you have about a week to enter the contest because I'm going to be announcing the winner next Sunday during the live show. So what you need to do, watch the video, like the video. It's pretty straightforward. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done. If you're already subscribed, then you can skip that step. Follow me on Instagram. I post some great things on Instagram and some stupid things on Instagram as well. Sometimes I, play gear that I don't necessarily show on the channel, or I'll actually play some songs that usually get, banned on YouTube, and I can get it through on Instagram, so I'll do that. So follow me on Instagram. Comment in the video as to why you want to win the unit. And then there's a little link there that goes to my webpage, addictedtogear.com. And there's a link there for the page that says free stuff. If you go on there, there's a form. Enter your information in that form. And then there's 2 skill testing questions. And guys, I tried to make it pretty easy. I mean, if you go in there, there's 1 question, I think, that I'm asking you, name a couple of my guitars, the model and the color. I think 3 of them, and 2 of my current amplifiers. And it's not difficult, guys. You have a bunch of videos on my webpage where you can see all of my gear, or most of it anyway. And obviously, if you go through some of my videos on my channel, you'll be able to see very easily what guitars and what amps I have. Just make sure you mention the current ones, because there's a lot of gear that has come and gone. And the trick question here is current. So once you enter that information, you're eligible to win. I'll put all the names that are eligible in the draw, and we'll pick a lucky winner for the Mighty Plug next Sunday. And you have to be on the show to win it. You can't dial this one in, guys. You got to attend, right? So I'm trying to make people come into the show and be aware that we're giving things away, and at the same time we have these Sunday live shows going on. All right, and if you want to spread the word, if there's other friends of yours that play bass or guitar and would like to win it, mention it to them. We'll grow our community and we'll get some more interesting people on the show. So that's it. So I'll mention it now. I'll mention it again at the end of the live show, and then it's up to you guys to follow through if you want to win free stuff. All right. This won't be the last giveaway, by the way, guys. We'll probably give away stuff on a regular basis, so stay tuned for that. And if you guys are not subscribed, you're going to miss out. So please subscribe if you haven't already done so. All right, so let's get back to the questions and comments. Hello from also bright and sunny Prague with no tourists, and the streets are nice and empty for us locals to enjoy. Some people say it's sad, but I love it. So there's always a silver lining to everything, Quicksilver. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, with all the crazy stuff that's been going on with this pandemic, I think there's still a lot of people that are finding the silver lining. I'm enjoying being home. I'm enjoying spending more time with the family. I'm enjoying, spending time with my kids, obviously. And as you said it, man, less traffic on the roads. That's not a bad thing. Not being able, not having to go into work. You can actually telecommute and do your work from home, which is always cool. There's a few advantages, but I think eventually we'll all appreciate being back to normal. But for the time being, yeah, there's a few things that we we can definitely enjoy. Good morning, Cool Tunes. Nice to see you in the house. Quicksilver says, I'm just fresh off a nice 3-hour nap. How long do you have to sleep before it's no longer considered a nap? I think 3 hours is about right. I think anything more than 3 hours, I think at that point, it's no longer considered a nap. I think it's considered sleeping. What do you guys think? So, before coming on the show, while I was waiting for the show to start, I was writing down, I made a list of all the amps that I've had so far, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple. But I'm up to 27 so far that I could remember. 27 amps that I've owned so far in my life. And I'm pretty darn sure I'm forgetting a couple. Actually, I just remembered another one. So I'll be 28. I'm sure if I think more carefully about it, I'll probably come up with another one. So let me just write this down here. The reason why I was writing this is because I was thinking of maybe making a video and going through the list of amplifiers that I've owned over the years, because often I try and give you my comments on the amps that I currently have, but I've been through so many amps that it would be probably an interesting thing to do, to give you my opinion on what I've owned in the past, how my, I guess, taste changed from the beginning, my first transistor amps that I've owned, all the way to what I have currently, and maybe give you an idea of why I ended up selling most of those amplifiers, because there's always a reason behind it. And after 28 amps, I think I've kind of dialed into the sound that I like. I think I know now what I like and what I don't like. And it would probably make an interesting video for you guys. I don't know if you guys think that's a good idea or not, but if you think it's a good idea, give me a thumbs up. Alan, I haven't calculated how many guitars I've owned. That's probably going to be the next list I'll make. And that one's probably going to be harder. Honest to goodness, guys, sometimes I have to go back and I have to actually look at my videos to remember all of the stuff that's come through. Because there's been, between amps, guitars, pedals, there's been a lot of stuff that's been through this place. And some of them I remember, some of them I don't. Pedals, especially pedals, is a little bit more hazy, especially early on in my teens. There was a lot of stuff that I tried, but I think it's always nice to take that stroll down memory lane. And then, of course, there's always those items that you sold and you regret, you know. And out of all the amps that I've had in the past, I'm gonna say there's only maybe 3 amps that I regret selling, that I might have kept given the opportunity. And so most of the time, whenever I do upgrade or swap, it's always for something that I believe is better anyways. So let me jump back here. Hey, Bob's Bitchin' is here. Gotta have my Java. Hi, Tony. How you doing? Hi, Gary. This week, okay, so Christian jumped in. This week I bought a used TC Electronic Nova delay. My first delay with tab function, makes a lot of fun to play with it. The Nova delay stuff is pretty interesting. I had purchased the bigger Nova system at one point from TC Electronics. The only thing that I found that was odd with that system was that when you would press the pedal, when you would press down on the the switch, it would engage when you would release the switch instead of when you would press it down, which was a little bit odd for me, because if you wanted to punch in a specific thing, you had to like punch in and punch out for it to engage. You know, kind of weird. So that one threw me for a little bit of a loop. But beyond that, I mean, the TC Electronic stuff has some pretty good sounds, in my opinion. So Seth is here. Hi Seth, how you doing? I'm just going and looking through who's jumped in the last little while. Ha! Jack says, I went to 7 pawn shops yesterday and they had absolutely no gear at all. Do you guys frequent pawn shops? Because in my opinion, the pawn shops in my area don't have good gear. They rarely have like decent guitars and amplifiers. It's mostly like stuff that nobody wants, or like no-name knockoff guitars, that kind of thing. So I usually don't waste my time with pawn shops in my area. Maybe you guys have better pawn shops. Fat Philosopher says, I hope you haven't sold off your new PRS already, because I put that one down. Also the Kramer. No way, man. I didn't sell that. It's still there. It's right behind me. Okay, it's right there. There we go. Right there. And that's quickly becoming my new favorite PRS, man. It's beautiful. Ever since I put the Peg City pickups in that guitar, I had, if you guys missed the video, Peg City 59 classic pickups were put into that guitar. I took the old pickups out and I put those in. Big difference in sound. Definitely sounds better in my opinion, a lot more rich. I posted that video, and guys, there's one thing I want to say when you're watching my video reviews, especially the ones where I'm posting video reviews on pickup comparisons. The amp that I'm playing through will change the sound and the way the pickup reacts tremendously. And in that particular video, I was using my Dirty Shirley, which is a lot more, it's not necessarily a clean amp. There's a lot of gain on tap. I dialed it back. It has a lot of bass. So, you know, after listening to the actual video, I can say that it definitely came through as being a bit more bass heavy, whereas in actual fact, you know, those pickups don't necessarily have that much bass. And when you're playing it through certain amplifiers, they do sound very different. That particular set sounds great with amps that are cleaner, Fender, Plexis, things like that, you know. They definitely shine in those particular types of amps. So the pickups that you're using will definitely change a lot, quite dramatically, depending on where you're playing them through. But to answer your question, Fat Philosopher, definitely not going to be selling that guitar anytime soon. It actually, and this is almost sacrilege, but I'm going to be honest with you guys, compared to, because that's an SE245, compared to my CE245, which is the American-made one, the neck on the SC feels better than the American one. The American neck is a bit chunkier, whereas the one on the SC is not as chunky. So I'm liking it. Let me adjust my chair here. I'm sinking down. I think it's time for me to buy a new chair. I'm slowly getting smaller here. Richard says, can we get a Peg City discount code? You took the words right out of my mouth, Richard. Definitely you can. If you go into the video where I did the review on the pickups, there's an Addicted to Gear discount code for those specific pickups. So you can click on the link, go to the Peg City website, and you can, I think it's a 15% discount that you'll get off the top for those particular pickups. And I'm also going to be reviewing a few other Peg City pickups. I just put a set into the Chipson, which is behind me on the rack. And those are the two-stroke pickups from Peg City. The two-stroke pickups are more modern sounding. They're not as vintagey sounding. They definitely match up very well with the Les Paul. I put them in there. I will do a review on those pickups, and I'll also offer you guys a discount code on those pickups as well. So don't say that, you know, you don't get anything from watching my channel. You definitely do. And of course, if you're in Canada, the Peg City pickups are definitely great value because they're made in Canada, so you don't have to worry about shipping and additional shipping costs and duties and all these kind of things that you're normally charged if you're ordering from places outside of Canada. And at the same time, of course, if you're looking at saving some money and you're from the States, well, the exchange is definitely worthwhile. So you're getting the 15% discount, plus you're getting better bang for your buck if you're in the States, because the American dollar is worth more than Canadian. So there you go. It's good all around. All right, so Cool Tunes wants to know if I use a compression pedal, and if so, why? All right, so yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I normally do. I normally use a compression pedal, although right now, if you look at my board, there's none on there. I took it out for the time being, and I normally will take it out and put it back in depending on what I'm trying to do with the board. I was reconfiguring some pedals, so I had taken it out. But the reason why I use a compression pedal, for a couple of things. You'll notice when you use a compression pedal, what it normally does is it evens out the individual notes. So if you're playing a chord, for example, if you're strumming chords, it tends to balance out the loudest and the lowest volume that you're getting out of your string. So it kind of like, how can I put this? It compresses. It basically takes the highest and the lowest and kind of evens it out a little bit to balance out the sound. So I like to use the compression pedal also when I'm doing a lot of chords, like let's say you're playing, not that I normally do this, but let's say you're playing like some staccato chords, like disco chords or something that need to cut through. Compressor will definitely help get the sound through in the mix. And it's a very subtle thing. Some people don't even know what a compressor is because there's not that much of a huge difference in the sound. But if you get a good compressor, it's definitely worthwhile having on your board. I would say compressor's a must, as is an EQ pedal. Let me just take the sound off of my my phone here. So that's a good question. I hope I answered that one for you. Cool Tunes, do a pickup how to swap video. I think you mentioned that in the last live chat. I would do that, but it's very boring and it's kind of hard to see because when you're working in the pickup cavity and you're soldering everything, it's kind of very difficult to see what's going on. So I feel like the pickup swap video would be a little bit difficult to film. But yeah, a couple of people have asked me to do that. Nor am I, Fat Philosopher. I'm not a big fan of chunky necks as well. Like if it's overly chunky, I don't necessarily bond with it that much. But I've got to say, from my collection so far, I would say probably the chunkiest neck that I have on my guitars would be my Seth Meyers PRS. So if you guys are familiar with the girth of that neck, then you'll know how chunky that is. And it's not extremely chunky. It's quite pleasant to play, and it's a nice change. If you're if you're swapping between a guitar that has a really, really thin neck, like the Kramer, for example, or the Bacchus Les Paul that I have, and you go to a chunky neck, you'll definitely it'll take you a couple of minutes to readjust. But I like the ability of having different guitars that play differently and feel differently. Because what's the point of having a bunch of guitars that all sound and play exactly the same? In my opinion. And that could be wrong, but that's just me. I like to have the variety, Have you ever played a Sustainiac? I haven't played one, but it looks like a whole lot of fun. I've seen a lot of people, namely Steve Vai and a few others, that have those installed in their guitars. Looks like it could be a lot of fun. That would be an interesting mod to put on one of the guitars eventually. But no, I haven't played one yet. All right. Let's just go down the list here. Hey, we have Shane from In the Blues is here. Welcome, Shane. Nice to see you're still up. Shane's a night owl. Ah, here comes trouble. There she is. She just barges in, keeps the door open, you know. I like she owns the place or something. Anyways, if you guys haven't checked out Shane's channel, very popular channel, In the Blues. Shane puts out some cool stuff on a regular basis. I'm a big fan. I've been watching his channel for a long time, so you guys definitely take a jump over there. Check him out. And, oh, Landon's here too. So, nice to see a lot of people jumping in. That's great. Good morning, Landon. How are you doing, my friend? Landon also has a cool channel. If you guys are not familiar with his channel as well, check him out. Definitely great stuff, and it's great to be part of, you know, the greater community, and just glad to see that I'm not the only one that's addicted to gear around here, you know. So speaking of gear and amplifiers and whatnot, so the grand tally is 28. I think it's 28 amps that I've gone through so far. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the latest acquisition, because yes, guys, I did it again. I warned you guys that I probably would do this, and I've been gassing over this amplifier for a while, and I ended up pulling the trigger. It's actually up there. I don't know if you can see it right there. I think you could recognize the emblem there. Well, I'll tell you the story. That's the Marshall Studio Vintage that I've been talking to you about. And I promised, well, I didn't really promise. I kind of mentioned that I would try not to purchase that one right away and wait a little bit. But I've been looking at that model and trying to see where they were being sold. And they're actually absolutely sold out everywhere. I looked at Long and McQuaid. I looked at LA Music. I looked at a few places even in the States, and all sold out, completely sold out. So I contacted a few people to see whether or not they'd be able to order one. And I think the earliest they mentioned that they'd be getting one would be November. So it's almost like it's destiny, guys, because I swear, I'm not lying to you guys. The day I was looking at this stuff, I kind of hung up the phone. I took a look at some local ads. Lo and behold, somebody just posted 4 hours earlier that Marshall Studio Vintage. And he was selling it for a very reasonable price. Contacted the gentleman. He told me he used it for about 90 minutes. So the amp is basically brand new. Hardly had any playtime on it. So obviously contacted the guy right away. Told him I was interested. I didn't even haggle on the price because his price was great. So I saved some money on the actual amplifier. God knows people are trying to sell these amplifiers for quite a bit on Reverb. I've seen them as going for as much as $1,900. That's not including shipping and whatever. And a lot of these sellers are from the States, so there's no way I would be spending that kind of money. So the latest acquisition is in the house. It's right there. I've been playing it for the last couple of days, and I will eventually make a video on that particular amplifier for you guys. But I have to say, if any of you guys are interested in buying that amplifier or considering buying that amplifier, a couple of words of warning. Tonefish, I'm not sure they actually have it in stock. Take a look very carefully, because a lot of times when you're scrolling through the Google listings, it says that it's in stock. When you actually go in, it's usually you have to order it. So if they're in stock, fantastic. But and a lot of times the ones that they have in stock are not the heads, they're the combo units. So see if they have the head version, and they might or they might not, but just check it out. Be careful. Anyways, for those of you that are big Marshall fans, as I am, definitely a great amplifier so far. The only thing I want to say is that if you think that that amplifier is not loud because it's only 20 watts, you'd be sadly mistaken. That amplifier is crazy loud, even at 20 watts. And it's, I know because I've had the actual Plexi from Marshall, the 50 watt versions, a couple of them, which were very loud as well. This guy is loud. So it's funny because I was reading the Marshall website and they were saying, you know, now you can have that Marshall sound without having to need any kind of attenuation. I had to giggle when I read that because this thing's loud, man. You can play it, but it's not home friendly unless you have a very, very patient wife. That's all I can say. But the tones are all in there. They're definitely in there. So if you're looking for that Marshall Plexi sound, definitely is in there in spades. Has a wonderful clean, beautiful note separation. It's a great pedal platform. So one way to get around the excessive volume is to use pedals to try and get your gain. Not necessarily, you don't have to use gain pedals that are super gainy because you just want to push it over the top a little bit. It works really well. And the input switches on those, they have two low and high, two lows, two highs. You can bridge those and get a really nice full sounding Plexi sound out of it. I mean, all the sounds are there and you have enough flexibility to basically dial in whatever you need. So definitely so far, guys, I'm really liking that particular amplifier. I was a little worried. Because I felt that it would knock out one of the other amps that I have because they're all kind of in that Marshall territory. So namely, you know, I was thinking maybe I wouldn't need the Brunetti anymore because the Brunetti is also 50 watts dialed down to 5 watts. But honestly, it's a very different sound. The Studio Vintage definitely sounds vintage. It's a whole different sound, whereas the Brunetti Plexi Man is a wonderful amplifier, but it sounds more like the recorded sound that you would get when you record a Marshall on an album. So it's more polished. It's a little bit less aggressive sounding, easier to manage. Whereas the Studio Vintage is very, you can't hide behind your mistakes with the Studio Vintage. It really shows all of your mistakes. So you have to be, you know, aware of that if you're going to be grabbing that type of amplifier. But definitely loving it so far, super happy with it, and I can't wait to get more playtime on it. So that is my gear acquisition story. And I'm looking forward to hearing your gear acquisition stories, if you have any. By the way, since we're on the topic of amps, have you guys seen the announcement that Friedman made yesterday? I don't know if you caught it or not. But Friedman announced, and let me see if I can actually pull up that image for you guys. 1 second. I think I still have it here. Yeah, I think I do. So Friedman yesterday announced this guy. Let me see if I can share it with you guys. Do you see that? So this is the Mini Brown Eye. And if you guys are familiar with Friedman amps, you know I'm a big fan. I like Friedman amps. I have the Dirty Shirley here. Fantastic amplifier. Of course, the Brown Eye is one of the very, very popular amplifiers that he's put out. But you really have to sell a testicle to be able to afford these amplifiers. They're very expensive. Massive sounding. They really sound heavy. So the video that they posted out yesterday was a shot of the 4x12 cabinet. And he's scrolling up the cabinet and there's somebody playing some really heavy music. And they're scrolling up the amplifier and you're expecting to see some big massive amp, and it's this little toaster sized mini brown eye. Sounded massive. So for you guys that are looking at maybe getting that killer, you know, gainy sound that is made famous by the brown eye, you could probably get that one now for a lot less money. I think regularly these amps are probably about $4,000, the full-sized one. Now you can probably get this one, maybe under $1,000, but I don't think so. I'm thinking it's probably going to be $1,500, something around there. But I think it's going to make a lot of people happy that have been trying to get that sound and a smaller package. I don't know, man. I don't know. But if you guys haven't seen it, I'm curious to find out how much that thing's going to cost. So let's move on. Let's talk about a few other things. I wanted to talk very briefly about mods, specifically guitar mods. And I wanted to ask you guys, how many of you guys actually mod your guitars? I'm just curious. Because I think a lot of people, and I could be totally off on this one. I think a lot of people bring home guitars and they just basically leave them stock because they're afraid to mess them up. And they don't necessarily mod things that, you know, could possibly be annoying to them. Maybe there's a few things that you like, a lot of things you like about the guitar that you bought, but maybe there's one or two little minor things that you don't really like or jive with, but you're afraid to modify that. I'm not like that at all, and you guys know that. So I'm just lurking in the shadows. I want you guys to answer these things, these questions here, because I know that some of you are actively modding. Like Seth says, he finally got his Hipshot hardtail bridge, put it in the Wormuth Strat body yesterday. Fender made in Mexico maple neck with rosewood, I guess, fretboard, and he plucked it as well. And he's wrapping it up next week. So, you know, Seth is obviously not worried about modifying anything on his guitars. So I'm wondering if you guys are looking at doing that as well. Because there's a couple of things that I do automatically, and you guys know that. You know, like if I'm not happy with the pickups, they're out. You know, basically throw those things out and basically put in a new set of pickups, because if the guitar plays great and feels great and it just doesn't sound the way you want it to, easy fix. So that's across the board. So the Gospel of Mark says, I mod guitars if I don't dig the pickups. I have a Gretsch Jet that I want to put pickups in. The stock ones aren't Filtertronic enough for me. So there you go. So obviously an easy change. Obviously not a big deal to change pickups. My opinion is that if I do mods on a guitar, I don't do it just because I feel like it. I do it because it's required. I usually look at it like this. I would say the most common thing that I'll swap out would be the nut on my guitars. Not because, you know, I'm a cork sniffer and it has to be bone or whatever, because no, there's a lot of nuts that are made of other materials these days that are just as good. But a lot of times they're not cut properly. And especially if you're changing the gauge of strings that you're using with your guitars. I've seen a lot of people just keep the same nut slot widths on their guitars even after they go up a gauge or go down a gauge. And it really messes things up a little bit, especially if you're going up a gauge. That's when you get people that are going to be constantly complaining that their guitar doesn't stay in tune. And the next thing they're going to try and do is change the tuners because they think it's a tuner problem when it's actually a nut problem. So that's one of the things that I normally look at on my guitars. Very, very, like almost immediately, is look at the nut. And also the tuners. I mean, the tuners, a lot of budget guitars skimp on the tuners, let's be honest. A lot of the hardware that you get are not necessarily the best. So a lot of people will upgrade the tuners, and that usually is a good thing, and it's a pretty easy thing to do. And I started putting locking tuners on some of my guitars as well, but I'm kind of not. I guess I'm regretting a little bit of, how can I put this? I mean, the locking tuners are good because if you use them properly, they do make string swaps quicker. The only thing that I don't like about locking tuners is if you use them the way they're designed, whereas you're putting the string through and then cutting it, so it's just holding the end of the string. In my experience, it's easier to have the string break off in that little section, and I really don't feel that there's anything bad about using, like vintage style Fender tuners and, wrapping them around. Yeah, it's a little longer to change your strings, but it works perfectly if you set up your strings properly and don't overdo the wraps and, do a nice neat job. They work just as well. And so, I don't feel that you have to install locking tuners. A lot of people feel that locking tuners will allow you for your strings not to slip, and that's not really the case. It's really just making string changes easier. So a lot of people, I guess, think about that the wrong way. Christian says, since I noticed Martin no wax pickups, I changed every pickups of my guitars. For me, it was worth the money. Yeah, I looked into those no wax pickups. They look interesting. I haven't tried them yet, though. There's so many different variety of pickups out there, guys, that it's very difficult to say that one is better or worse than another. It really is just a question of flavor. But you're able to find, with a little careful search, you're probably going to be able to find the pickups that resonate best with your taste. And once you land on those pickups, then, it's hard not to put those pickups in all your guitars. Although I prefer not to have the same pickups in all of my guitars, because then I feel it's redundant. What's the point of having 4 strats that sound identical? I prefer to have a little bit of variety and hotter pickups in one guitar, more vintage pickups in another, for example, and just be able to have the flexibility of changing guitars or instruments depending on what signal chain you're playing through. Some amps will prefer certain types of pickups. Other amps might play better with others, so it's nice to have that variety. Dan says, I have locking tuners on all but one of my electric guitars, Fender and Gibson. Just makes changing strings so much easier. I've had no issue with them. If you get good quality tuners, you shouldn't have any issues. There's a lot of knockoffs, however, that you have to be careful of. And I noticed that a lot of the sellers on eBay, they're selling like, it's very common to see, let's say, Wilkinson stuff. A lot of times I'm looking at those ads and I'm thinking these are not real Wilkinson pickups, tuners. You got to be careful. I would prefer to buy my tuners through a shop than through a seller on eBay, just to be sure you're getting authentic stuff. It's very easy to knock off stuff. I've seen a lot of chipsins that have tuners that are labeled Grover on them, or Goro, whatever, and at the end of the day, they're clearly not. And a lot of the sellers that are selling these things on eBay just remove the hardware from these chipsins and try and pass them off as the real thing when they're actually not. So just be careful with that. Alan hit the nail on the head. Good quality locking tuners are expensive. The cheaper ones are not worth buying. In many cases, that's absolutely true. Yeah, well, Russell, if you don't change your strings or mess around with your strings too much, they usually don't break. If you are like me and try to kind of, I swap out pickups and stuff, so sometimes I'll take out the strings, I'll just loosen up the locking tuners, take out the strings, do what I need to do, and try reinstalling them. My experience is it only works about 2 or 3 times before the strings end up snapping, especially the thin E strings. So let me just go back and some of the comments. here that I've missed. Mike says for strats, I rewire them to a master tone and volume setup and then relocate the volume to the middle tone position to make more room for my hand on the bridge. Yeah, so that's one of the mods that I guess the Squiers were like. If you look at the Squier I have here, let me just grab that. That's one of the reasons that I like. That's one of the reasons there's a volume and a tone as opposed to a volume and two tones. So they kind of kept the volume in the same position. Where what you're saying is move over the volume a little bit here so it's out of the way. But these guitars are great value, guys. I don't know if they're still easy to find or not, but if you guys like Charvels, for example, you're basically getting the features of a Charvel at a fraction of the cost. I mean, you can put humbucker pickups in this. You can easily swap out the pick guard and convert it into a HSS Strat or a Strat with 3 single coils. You can go back to the tone, 2 tones, 1 volume if you want. The neck, really nice. Some people don't like the painted headstock to match the body. I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of this. But, you know, if you're courageous, you can sand that off if you want to. And the neck is satiny. I normally just run some sandpaper on the neck to smooth it out. So it looks glossy, but there's actually no finish on here. It's just a wax. That's all I put on here. So it looks like there's poly, but there's no poly on this. And you can tell because the front of the fretboard here is really not shiny at all. It's like raw wood. So fantastic value. Slap some decent pickups in here, and you're in business. I grabbed 2 of them just because they're that, in my opinion, they're a steal for the money. And if you grab these used, when they pop up, they're not very expensive at all. There's not much to do, you know, so great value. Richard says a good Squier has a painted headstock. Well, I mean, some people don't like that though. I have a contemporary Strat and noticed when it was next to my 50s classic vibe, I could tell the volume on the contemporary is a little further away from the pickup. Yeah, that's kind of what I suspected too. I think it's a little bit further away. Let's do the test. Let me grab another guitar. I try not to wake the dog. So here, if we look at them side by side, so I think you're right. Can we see that here? Yeah, definitely. I think this one's definitely closer than this one. So I think we solved that one. I think we solved it. We solved the mystery. And Lou says he usually installs treble bleeds in his Strats and push-pull pots to use the bridge neck combination. That's the cool thing about people that want to go HSS right now, is that you do have some really cool circuits available that will allow you to take full advantage of the humbucker and the 2 single coils, because I always felt that it's very difficult to match up a humbucker with single coils. For whatever reason, I always feel that when you're switching between the humbucker and the single coils always sound anemic a little bit, because your ear is used to listening to the fuller sound of the humbucker And when you drop over to the single coils, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't blend all that well, in my opinion. So I only have one guitar like that, and I'm not that crazy about that configuration. So I prefer either going full humbucker or stay single coil. But if you want to take advantage of that, and you do have the ability now to, with the switch, when you have a humbucker, normally you want to have a 500K pot. When you have a single coil, it's 250K. So it's hard to have that combination in one switch. Now they do have circuits that will allow you to have a 500K and a 250K in the same pot. So when you switch over, it actually switches over the value of the pot, which makes it sound great. Because previous to that, you had to kind of almost go in between. You had to get something that was a little bit more than 250 and a little less than 500 to try and make both of them sound good, and it was always a compromise. So Quicksilver doesn't like the pale looking fretboards. He prefers more vintage tint like the HSS CV. So the reason for that is because the actual wood is not treated at all, right? As you play it, it will darken up with dirt and grime and oil from your hands. You can actually put in some mineral oil to darken it up a little bit. And there's a couple of products out there. I think Monty from Monty's Guitars sells a wax that has a little bit of a dye in it to make fretboards darker. You can definitely apply that on the neck and it'll look almost roasted, you know, if it really bothers you that much. But or you can tint it. I mean, if you want to, you can definitely tint it, but I wouldn't necessarily do that. I'd leave it as is. To me, the pale fretboards remind me of the same fretboards you're getting on the Charvels. They're typically the same, unless it's a roasted maple fretboard. They're always going to be a little bit paler, but an easy thing to fix. Yeah, they're definitely easier. They're nicer to play because they're not sticky. So whenever you actually have a poly finish, you tend to have something sticky under your fingers, whereas the plain wood is natural. You know, it's just a different feel. So guys, I wanted to also mention, beyond talking about who's got new gear, what toys you've been playing with in terms of amps and pedals and whatnot, and the interesting announcement from Friedman, I noticed that when I was playing the Marshall and I was playing the Brunetti, something popped into my mind, and it was something that I wanted to discuss with you guys. When I was looking at those amplifiers, I felt that often when people are looking at like a Plexi style amp, they're definitely looking for that authentic Marshall sound, but at the same time they don't necessarily like the Marshall sound because it is so raw and it is a little bit harder to tame. The Brunetti Plexi, man, again, like I mentioned, kind of like solves that issue because it is way more, I would say, smooth, less aggressive. To me, the Plexi, the Studio Plexi, is more like a sports car that's a little bit hard to handle, whereas the Brunetti is a little bit more refined in the sense that you have more controlled volume, you have all the tweakability of a hot rodded Marshall sound, if you want to go that way, to the initial vintage sound, and they don't sound necessarily the same. So keeping that in mind, I think if you're looking for something authentic to that Marshall tone, the Plexi, the Studio Plexi, is great. I had, previous to that, purchased the Silver Jubilee Mini, which I really wanted to like, but I sold, I think, almost immediately. It didn't you know, it sounded great on some videos, but when you brought it home, I felt that it was a one-trick pony, and it wasn't really giving me the flexibility that I wanted. So what they don't show you in a lot of these videos is, and having the amp here in my studio right now, I could attest to this. It's very, very difficult to record the studio vintage because it is so loud. If you're trying to record it with mics like I normally do, you're gonna have to wait till people are out of the house. If you want to actually show your viewers how it actually saturates at louder volume, you gotta crank the thing past 7, and that's loud. Like I was getting a ringing in my ears just playing it for like a couple of minutes at the louder volumes. It is that loud, but it definitely has that punch, you know, that Marshall plexi punch where you feel it in your gut. It has that. So when I was looking back at some of the videos that got me intrigued about the amp to begin with, I can now see that a lot of them are using attenuators or using silent recording systems that don't sound at all the same as what you're hearing in the room. So I'm going to try to eventually make a video review when there's nobody in the house, so I can actually show you what it sounds like, lower volumes and cranked. But a lot of people dismiss the amplifier as just being too loud because they're trying to get the gain out of the amplifier directly. You have to remember that you have a lot more flexibility if you're playing an amplifier like that and you're using pedals. If you go with your pedals, you can definitely bring the volume down and still have some really nice gain, and the effects loop on that amplifier works really, really well as well. So you can definitely put in a little bit of reverb, little plate reverb, or a little slapback delay just to make it sound even bigger. So I can't wait to actually do that for you guys so you get a better idea of what that thing sounds like. Anyone know what I can put on a painted neck to make it easier? Well, the first thing, Ben, is keep the neck clean, because if you start getting grime on the neck, it just makes it worse. Depends on what type of a neck. Is this a Strat neck or is it a Les Paul neck? If it's a Strat neck like this, similar to this, except painted with poly, you can lightly sand that with some sandpaper, and you can rough it up a little bit, and it'll make it a lot easier and less sticky. Vox Guitars Rock says it's hard to nail Marshall tone when there's more than one Marshall. That's true. And a lot of times the sounds that you're going to be hearing recorded, you know, they're playing it at extremely loud levels. So you think you're going to be able to get those sounds at bedroom levels. You're not going to be able to get them at bedroom levels. It's guaranteed. The Carnauba wax is great. Yeah, you can get that in the car section of your automotive supply shop. It's just a wax. You apply it, let it dry for a couple of minutes, then sand, like just polish it with some cotton, an old cotton rag or something, and it'll be like super, super slick. Vox says Pledge for furniture is pretty slippery, but not sure it's okay on a guitar. I'd be hesitant to use Pledge on my guitars. Pledge, I mean, it's mineral oil with some color in it. They say it's lemon, but it's just normal. It's just like lemon scented, but it's basically mineral oil. So you're better off staying away from Pledge. It could react with certain surfaces. If your guitar has is nitrocellulose, it reacts to certain things. I wouldn't mess with that. I would try and use polishers or cleaners that are designed to be used with your guitar. Has anyone tried a roasted neck for a while, and can you tell me if it's staying more stable? I would assume that they would. And this is just not scientific or anything like that, but from my experience, from what I understand, the roasted maple necks, they're dried in a kiln, and I think the sap and all that kind of stuff evaporates from the wood, so that technically it should be more stable. But what I've learned over time is that usually the necks that tend to be more stable are the ones that do have a finish. I had a Music Man at one point, which they don't necessarily finish the neck with anything except gun stock oil and a little wax. Beautiful feeling necks, probably amongst the best feeling necks I've ever had on a guitar, but they were not very stable. It would change. I would have to readjust the neck very frequently on that guitar, because I feel that because the neck is not sealed as it would be when you're using poly, the humidity will affect the wood more. That's my theory. And that was one of the guitars that I felt needed a little bit more love and attention. They do look really great. The roasted maple necks look really nice. At first, I didn't like them. I think even at one point, I think Gibson tried a roasted maple neck on their Les Pauls at one point when they were having trouble, I guess, with the rosewood neck embargo or whatever it was. They had tried to see if it would fly, and I don't think most people liked the roasted maple necks on Les Pauls, but on the Strats, really nice. And if I'm not mistaken, the new versions of these contemporary Squiers are great. If I'm not mistaken, they have some really nice necks on these guitars now. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they also went with stainless steel frets. So I think that's pretty nice. Pretty nice. Yeah, steel wool on your guitar, if you're trying to use steel wool to, I don't know if you're using it on your frets or if you're using it to smooth down the back of your neck, but yeah, if you use steel wool, keep it away from your pickups, because the pickups will attract all of the little filings from your steel wool, and it's not good. Also, it scratches the finish on your guitar, especially if it's nitro. So if you're using steel wool on your guitar, be very careful. Make sure you blow off all the steel wool with compressed air, and I would remove the pickups before I would play around with that. If you're gonna be steel wooling your neck for whatever reason, maybe the best thing to do is remove the neck first before you actually go near your guitar with any steel wool. Then I want to know, what's the oldest piece of gear you've hung on to? The oldest, I'm going to say, it's a guitar. And it's one of my made in Japan Strats. It's a Sunburst Strat with a rosewood neck. It's a kind of a 60s style Strat that I purchased a long time ago. And that is one of the guitars that I've had probably the longest now. And I still love that one. I still very happy with that one. And also my PRS, the American made one. I've had that one. I don't know exactly how long I've had it. I would have to go back and check, but it's probably going to be over 10 years for sure. Yeah, way more than 10 years. So Simon says, I put a FU tone in the Squier and it works. Yeah, I did it with one of these. I forget if it was the red one. Yeah, it's the red one. It's not this one. I put the FU tone bridge into the red Squier, and it makes a difference. It's not a huge difference. It's a subtle difference, but yeah, there is a difference. I think every little element that you upgrade on your guitar will make it better, but it's just a question of, is it worth the energy and the time? Like for the FU tone bridges, I feel the difference when I play that guitar, but I don't know if anybody would actually hear the difference. But feel is very important. I mean, The guitar has to feel great for you to be able to play it on a daily basis, right? That's what makes the guitars a keeper. It's not just the sound, but it's also the feel. I have a vintage modified Squier and it sounds great. I tune it in for open G for slides. The Squier stuff is great. I keep on saying it, guys, and I still think that you know, overall for the money you can't beat the Squiers, as long as they're not the. You have to make it's either classic vibe are usually good. The contemporary I feel are good. With a little bit of love, you can make these guitars great. The affinity stuff I would stay away from. I mean, they look okay, but it's not even worth upgrading those, because if you're going to upgrade the affinity stuff, the money you're going to put into it is going to be worth more than the actual value of the guitar. And then if you try to sell the affinity stuff, you're not going to be able to get your money back. So if you're planning on upgrading something, I would say the contemporary is a good platform, or the classic vibe. And the classic vibe Telecasters are great. Simon wants to know, with your white Squier, try FU tone and middle single pickup with 5-way select, see the difference. So I guess you're trying to tell me that you would hear the difference more if I would be just listening to it with the middle single coil. Yeah, I'll try that experiment for sure. I don't know, Ben, if Squier still sells the contemporaries like new ones. They have a new model. I don't know if they're still selling these, but I know they came out with a new model of these contemporaries with some upgrades to them, and they look very good. I don't know why anybody would not consider playing a Squier. I mean, they're great. So just because it doesn't say Fender, who cares? You know, I don't really mind it. But some people are like, you know, maybe embarrassed to play Squiers because they're like, oh, it's not a real Fender. But honestly, if you pick up one of these or pick up another Squier, like I have the Squier Deluxe behind me here, pick that one up and play it, and play, let's say, a made in Mexico Fender, or even some of the American made stuff. I can put that guitar against an American made Strat with the tweaks and mods that I made to it, and it would probably hold its own. So John agrees with me. He says the Squiers are great. Of all my guitars, I'm currently always searching or reaching for my contemporary 50s classic vibe or 70s classic vibe. You know, I used to have a Squier Butterscotch Classic Vibe, which I sold, but I played that one almost exclusively for a while. Even though I have a 52 reissue, I liked the sound and the cutting sound on that guitar better, and I was bringing it to like jams and stuff more frequently than I was playing my 52 reissue. And when I put them side by side, I have a video, probably got over 100,000 views so far. It's an old video where I was playing the classic vibe and I was playing the 52 reissue, and was doing a blind test to see which ones people preferred. Most people preferred the Squier classic vibe, and they were amazed. Like, people were like blown away, like, I can't believe it. I like it better than the 52 reissue. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to believe it. I mean, it's it's just a question of like what pickups you have in there, and whether you like a more cutting sound with more mids, or you like a laid back sound. But anyway, for like $475 new, those guitars are great. I sold it, and since then I've purchased other Strats, other Telecasters as well. But I mean, it was a great guitar. Now I still have the contemporary. I have a contemporary, a custom Telecaster from the Classic Vibe series, and I still have that one. But I did change the neck on that one, because I felt that the neck on the classic Vibe for the custom version was a little bit too thin for my liking. So I changed the neck on it. The neck that's on it now is not bad. I feel it's a little bit maybe too wide. So I haphazardly put a neck that I had on there. Eventually, I'll get the right neck on that guitar and it'll be a keeper. The body's great. Beautiful looking body with the binding and everything like that. And I tried the custom, the full Fender USA custom guitar in a shop, side by side with mine. Couldn't tell a difference. So at the end of the day, yes, maybe the hardware is better and maybe the quality control is better. But to be able to justify the additional $1,000 or whatever it is, I don't know. I didn't feel it. I wasn't feeling it. So that just goes to say, guys, that with a little tweak, you can make almost any guitar a lot better. Landon says, I had a Squier Paranormal Series Tornado last year. It was the same quality as a classic Vibe. Really nice. I haven't tried those one. I never tried that series, Landon, so I couldn't really comment on them. But, I mean, look-wise, spec-wise, they look good. But you really have to try them, You have to kind of live with them for a while just to see whether or not... There's always something that comes up. If you have one guitar, one amplifier, you're less likely to be tempted to swap things, and you're less likely to compare. When you have a bunch, you're more likely to compare and be nitpicky, and then the little things that are maybe odd with that particular amp or guitar will eventually cause you to be fixated on it, and then you'll be looking for something that's better. So in a way, having too much gear is not good because you spend more time analyzing and comparing, more time than you should be actually playing your instruments. But I think you understand what I'm saying. So Dan says the Friedman BE Mini is a solid state amp for only $329. So that's the official street price? Wow, I'm blown away. I didn't know it was solid state. I didn't know that. So if it's a solid state amp, basically it's a pedal circuit, right? That's what it is. So I guess they've taken what they've done with the BE pedal, put it into a mini transistor amp format, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. Interesting. Very interesting. I'm actually very surprised that they went... solid state. Wow. I'm blown away. I got to investigate that. I know there's going to be a slew of reviews coming out on this pedal, on this amplifier, if it's that inexpensive. But it sounded good in the demo, in the video. But then again, we'll see. The truth will be in the pudding. Very interesting. Simon says, Tony, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and Indonesian Squiers, you can change. Yeah, okay, Rico. Have you seen the new Squier Contemporary Strats? 2 single coils together, like hum canceling, and they're at an angle, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I don't like those. I don't like them. I'm very traditional in my guitars in terms of how I like them to look. And single coils, only 2 of them. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's trying to do the Telecaster thing on a Strat. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I don't like the look, so I don't think I'd actually buy that one. If it doesn't get past, maybe it's shallow. doesn't get past the look, I won't buy it. Tonefish says, I have a Squier Contemporary Guitar Center 50th Anniversary FSR. It's incredible. No doubt, Tonefish, no doubt. James says he's late coming on. No worries, James. It's all good. Got my first Harley Benton Thursday. The SC Junior. Not bad for $200. So do you guys prefer the single cuts or the double cut juniors? I am a big fan of the single cut. I don't like the look of the double cut for whatever reason. I don't know why. I feel that if Harley Benton, and I know they did this at one point, if they would come out with a satined, finished single cut with the P90s in red, something that is not necessarily poly finish, just maybe, I don't know, a light finish, they'd sell a lot of those. I don't know why they don't do that. I know they did a limited run at one point. I don't know, man. I would grab one. At $200, I would definitely grab one. I think the pale neck looks more super strat-like than the roasted necks on the new contemporary strats. I know that Andertons did a video on the new versions, and Danish Pete was raving about his and how great the neck looked. It looked very like high-end, and I looked at it in the video. Definitely looked high-end to me as well. I don't know if all of them are like that or if they just got lucky with that particular neck, but the wood on it was really, really great. So, John, you think the double cuts are more comfortable to play? A lot of people would think the opposite, though. Considering, yeah, okay, well, you're right. The double cuts, yeah. I just don't like the look of them. I do agree. Yeah, you do have more reach. You do have more reach. Yeah, you're right. Brian says, I hear, yeah, but the TV yellow double cut I found attractive and bought along with the burst single cut junior, of course. Right now, I feel that the colors that they have on those are not the best. They have like a silver sparkle one, which, I don't know, silver sparkle, really? They should go more like vintage colors on those. I think if they would put them out in some vintage colors, it would definitely be more interesting for a lot of people, I think. Landon says, I plan to check out a new Squier Contemporary Jaguar when they come out. Roasted maple neck. Never tried a Jaguar with double humbuckers. Interesting. I am going to be curious to see what those play and sound like. I've never owned a Jaguar. I'm not a big fan of Jaguars in terms of the look. I know a lot of people like them. They're quite popular. So I think they're going to be good sellers. But I don't know what to expect from those contemporary Jaguars in terms of just feel, how they're put together, how they're going to sound and feel overall. So I'll be curious to see what your opinion is on that one once you come out with that video. I'll check that one out. The satin finish would be great. I like this matte finish though. Hate fingerprints. That's one of the reasons why I actually sold one of the Harley Bentons that I got. I got the Fusion T, which was a Telecaster version of their Fusion series, which was black. Big mistake, guys. If you don't like fingerprints on your guitars, that guitar had like a mirror finish on it. Like you would just look at it and it would look like greasy. I don't like that. You know, the best guitars, if you have an issue with sweaty fingers, are the lighter colored ones like these. The darker you get on your guitars, the darker, the more likely you're gonna see your fingerprints. And just a tip for any of you that like to paint guitars, if ever you're starting off and you decide to paint a guitar, avoid black, because you have to be like really, 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 really careful, because black shows all of the defects. Any speck of dust, anything that's not perfect is going to show up on a black guitar. So just word of warning, if you're painting a guitar and it's your first one, go with lighter colors. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble, believe me. Simon wants to know if I've tried bass guitar or acoustic. Yeah, I definitely have played acoustic guitars. I have a couple of them. I did some videos of shootouts between a couple of different acoustic guitars, some budget ones and some more expensive ones, just to compare the sound and I guess the dollar value comparatively speaking with the sound. I have a video of that if you haven't seen it. I do also have a couple of bass guitars just because I like to play bass from time to time. I don't really do it all that often, but I do like to play bass once in a while, just to, you know, change the perspective of what I'm listening to in the song. And at the same time, it's nice to have a bass if you're doing any kind of recordings and you want to put down the bass lines. I normally do that as well, so it's always good to have a bass guitar ready. I haven't changed the strings on my bass guitar probably since I bought it, so it's got to be getting close to 10 years now. So it really will sound bassy for sure. I'm due to change the strings and maybe adjust the bass. I'm not really comfortable with adjusting bass guitars. I know the specs on the Strats and the Les Pauls. I know how much the tolerances need to be. For the bass guitars, not that much. I'm sure it's not that different, but I just need to get the information to be able to do the setups. And I should definitely throw a new set of strings on my bass guitar. But bass guitar strings are pretty darn expensive, so I've been kind of avoiding that. Spending my money on guitar strings. At least I use those more often, but I should definitely invest in some new guitar strings eventually. You know what? We're talking about the double cuts. I've tried a double cut and a single cut, actual real Gibson Jr. in the store, and I didn't like the necks. They were talk about bulky necks. We were talking about that earlier. Those were quite bulky. I didn't like them. So I'm thinking the Harley Benton ones would probably be a better bet, or even the Vintage brand has some really nice ones as well. And probably the neck on those guitars would be more user-friendly. So I'm going to remind you guys, because at the top of this video, I mentioned that there's a giveaway going on. And for those of you who came in late, because I know there's quite a few of you now that have joined up later on in the video, I'm just going to recap. I posted a video yesterday, and I was announcing a giveaway. The giveaway is the NUX Mighty Plug, the little unit that you can plug into your guitar and play silently. It's actually a pretty nifty unit. I did a full review on it, so you guys can check out the full video. But yesterday I posted a video announcing the giveaway. So if you guys want a chance to win that particular unit, all you have to do is watch the video, like that video, comment on the video as to why you would like to win the unit, and then just follow the instructions in the comment section. It's pretty simple. So subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Follow me on Instagram if you're not already following me on Instagram. Then there's a link there to go to my website, addictedtogear.com. There's a little form that you need to fill out with your information so I can contact you if you should win. And at the bottom of that form, there's 2 skill testing questions. One is just asking you to list 3 of my current guitars and the color of each one. And the other question is list 2 of my current amplifiers. I would think that those would be pretty easy to answer because you have all my videos on my channel, so you can definitely go through those and see what I have. And you definitely have access to a lot of videos also on my webpage, where I list a lot of gear. And of course, if you're following me on Instagram, I normally post pictures and stuff and videos there as well. So you can definitely answer those questions relatively easy, I would think. Once you've done that, you're entered into the contest. And then I'll be announcing the winner of the giveaway next Sunday, same time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's important for you to tune in, because that's when we will be announcing the grand prize winner, okay? Very straightforward, but you have to do all the steps in order to be eligible. If you don't do all the steps, then unfortunately you will not be eligible to win. So pretty straightforward. Take a couple of minutes and you have an opportunity to win some really great free gear. Who doesn't like free gear? I know I do. And guys, if you subscribe to the channel, be aware that we will be doing some other giveaways on a regular basis. It's been a while since I did a giveaway. The last thing we gave away was that really cool guitar kit. But I will be giving out some other prizes. So please tune in. Otherwise, you'll be missing all of those. Getting back to the questions. How much is this thing? Sounds easier to buy. Well, you can definitely go out and buy it if you want to. I think the new Fender Pug in what? Simon says, I think the new Fender Pug-in is the winner. Plug-in, I think you meant to write. So Jimmy, yeah, we talked about the mini brown eye at $330. That's going to be a killer. I think they're definitely going to, I think they're going after the Spark market and the Katana market and, you know, all of these little mini amps. It's going to kick their ass, I think, if you like that tone. Fat Philosopher says, how specific do we have to be on the color? Is brown enough, or do we need to say caramel brown, cream burst, sparkle? Well, if you're colorblind, then maybe the contest wouldn't be fair for you guys, but I think there's enough selection that you'd be able to nail a few of the colors on my guitars. I don't think it'll be an issue. Keith says, yeah, you should change the strings every 10 years, whether it needs some or not. Honestly, on my guitars, I do change my strings regularly, but on the basses, I don't really think about it all that much because, you know, the bass tend to sound low anyways. So, but yeah, I think a new set of strings would be called for, definitely. So guys, anything else you guys want to ask me? Anything else you guys want to ask, or any new gear you guys acquired or are looking at acquiring? I'm curious to know what you guys are looking at in terms of pedals, maybe even strings. What do you guys prefer in terms of strings, since we're talking about that right now? I've jumped around with my strings in the past quite a bit. I used to play 10s, well, 9s, then I went to 10s. Then when I was into Stevie Ray Vaughan, I went all the way to 11s, which were not easy to bend at all. And now I'm slowly coming back down. I'm actually, the last set I'm playing around with now are 9.5s, but I think 9.5s, 8s, around those gauges are what I like to normally play. I don't like to go too heavy. I usually grab a set of hybrid slinkies from Ernie Ball, which I feel I like, but I'm experimenting with different gauges, and I'm tending to go back down a little bit now. They just are more easy to play for me. John says, I have no idea what gauge strings are on most of my guitars. Well, it's good to know, because obviously there's going to be a few strings that you're going to gravitate towards, and if you're bending, especially if you tend to overbend your strings, then it would be probably cool to go with a heavier gauge strings just to keep you under control if you're constantly overbending. And if you're underbending, then maybe you want to go with a lighter gauge string just to keep things in place in terms of tonality. Rico says he picked up the new Supro Delta King 10, really enjoying the vintage tones. Have you tried one? No, I didn't. I think somebody asked during the last session. I had a Supro dual tone. Oh man, I forgot to write that one down in my amps. You see? So now I'm up to 29. That's another one. Let me write that down. Supro dual tone. 29. So 29 amps. And I'm pretty sure there's another one I'm forgetting in there. So I'm pretty sure it's about 30 amps I've had so far. So I've had the dual tone. And that's the only Supro amp that I've tried. I haven't tried the other ones, but this one's getting a lot of attention. I don't know if I'm a big fan of the 10-inch speaker though, because I don't think any of my amps have had a 10-inch speaker in it. They've all had 12-inch speakers. So I'm wondering how that's gonna sound. I should definitely try that one out eventually and see if I bond with that one. How do you like it so far? And what kind of music are you trying to use with that particular amp? William says he's thinking about buying a Sabadius Tube Screamer. I don't even know what that is, William. How many Tube Screamers are there on the market? I mean, I think everyone and his uncle makes a flavor or variation of a Tube Screamer. I've seen so many different types. So what's the key thing about this one, William? Why are you looking at buying this one? I can't keep track of all the Tube Screamers out there. Thinking of getting an inexpensive bass guitar to noodle around with. Suggestions? We talked about it earlier. Squier, man. Get yourself a Squier bass. They have their version of the jazz bass. They have a few different versions. They're great. Can't go wrong. And they're not expensive. I think you can get them about, what, $400 maybe brand new? If you look on the used market, even cheaper. There's a bunch of them on the used market. Yamaha also makes very good basses, by the way. If you're looking at buying something that is not too expensive and well made, Yamaha makes good stuff. So check out some of those as well. It all depends if you want an active bass, passive bass. John says all the pedals are Tube Screamers, which is not actually inaccurate. I mean, yeah, a lot of them are based on the Tube Screamer. Fat Philosopher says I like the excuse me, D'Addario strings over Ernie Ball because Ernie used way too much packaging. It's true. It's true. There's a lot of paper that goes into the Ernie Ball strings. Yeah. Yeah, and the D'Addario puts them all into one plastic bag, which I think is, but it's plastic as opposed to being paper, right? So plastic lasts, what, 250 years or something like that, where paper technically recycles easier. So I don't know. You're right, but there's no easy environmentally correct answer when it comes to strings, I guess. But I'm all for less packaging. I agree with you. It's like when you go to Costco and you buy yourself a little USB stick that's this big and they put about this much plastic around it. It blows my mind. Like, they should seriously get fined for doing stuff like that. There's more plastic in the packaging than in the USB stick. And it's all plastic. So Sabadius is a boutique builder from Argentina. He's the guy that makes those funky vibes that RJ Ronquillo loves. Interesting. Okay, I'll check them out. I don't know them. South America. Interesting. There's a lot of really great boutique pedal builders out there today. So many different flavors of pedals. You can go crazy trying to select your tone with all of these pedals. At this point, I feel that I have the tone that I've been looking for, and I'm not really all that tempted with new pedals. I think I know what I like, and I don't want to go too crazy, but I have gravitated towards pedals and tube amps. And although I was tempted to go the other way with multi-effects units, you know, Kempers and Axe FXs and all that, honestly, guys, I know I'm a tube type guy. Yes, the multi-effects units are great for a short amount of time, just as a toy to play with. A lot of people are playing with these things on stage professionally because it is convenient. But I gotta say, for me, nothing beats a tube amp, pedals, or even plugged directly into a good tube amp. You get the power, you get the air moving, and you get all of the nuances, you get all of the feedback, all of the harmonic distortions that you don't really get with a multi-effects unit. Just my opinion, guys. And we'll talk a little bit before we wrap up today. I want to talk a little bit about speakers. Excuse me, guys. Something in my throat. I agree, Vox. Yeah, they're trying to stop theft. I understand, but I mean, there's got to be a better way than all that packaging that's really destroying the earth. You know, I mean, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I know that's not the right way of doing it. Paul says the Celestion Creamback 10-inch is the punchiest speaker at either 10 or 12 I've ever heard. Really tempted to add to my 12 Neo Creamback. So Paul, here's what I want to ask you. You have a Creamback. I have a Creamback, but it's not a Neo Creamback. I have a Creamback in my 112 cabinet, and I've been playing various speaker cabinets with different amps, specifically the new Marshall. The Creamback is not my favorite, though, I gotta say. To me, I feel that with that particular amp, I have a cabinet here that has two 12s, and it's Guitar Warehouse speakers in it, ET65, and if I'm not mistaken, there's the Guitar Warehouse equivalent of the Retro 30, which I believe they call it the Veteran 30. That combination works really well with that particular amp, and I find that the Creamback on its own is not as interesting. And I'm a little disappointed because I really wanted to like the Creamback. Ben says, I'm a newbie, so I apologize for the simpleton questions. But here's another. All these amps with apps like Sparks and Katanas, do you still need pedals with them or not? Well, a lot of these platforms, like the Katana, have built-in effects so that you don't necessarily need to buy additional pedals, but you can use pedals with them. But the idea is to have a grab and go amplifier that you can just take off and have what you need in that particular amp. So yeah, if you're looking at not having to buy pedals, then those units normally would allow you to have access to some effects. So the Gospel of Mark says, I'm at the point where I'm happy with my main amp and my handful of guitars. Now, isn't that a great place to be? Isn't it a relief? You know, I gotta say, for me, I'm kind of at that point where I don't know if there's gonna be something that's gonna tempt me beyond what I already have. But every time I say that, Mark, every time I say that, something else pops up. So never say never. You know, I thought I'd be okay, and then the Marshall popped up. You know, and I'm sure there's going to be something else that's going to grab my attention. Just a matter of time. What do you suggest for a high gain overdrive distortion pedal? Good question. I don't usually play like super high gain. I don't usually play that style of music, so maybe I'm not going to give you the best answer, but I don't know, from the pedals that I have here, I think the pedal with the highest gain that I have right now is probably the Plextortion from Wampler, and I also have the Fireman from NUX, which has a lot of gain on tap. But those are probably the two pedals with, and the Friedman. But the Friedman that I reviewed, I don't have it here right now, but the Friedman that I talked about, the brown eye, the BEOD, which is basically the brown eye sound in a pedal, has a lot of gain on tap. It really does. So any of those would work. Excuse me, guys. So Vox says my 5-watt tube amp sounds better and is as loud as my 2x60 60-watt solid state amp. Yeah, typically the wattage rating when you're talking tube and transistor is not necessarily the same. 5 watts can be surprisingly loud. The Marshall that I was talking about earlier goes down to 5. Even at 5, it's extremely loud. The same with the Brunetti. The Brunetti goes from 50 to 5. Very loud, even at 5 watts. So a lot of people might think 5 watts is not enough. When it comes to tube amplifiers, 5 watts is a lot. Yeah, that's true. The big packages is all about catching your eye on the shelf. Absolutely. I agree. So Paul says, Tony, you would love the GMR Little Plexi. Don't tempt me with more stuff, Paul. Come on. That's not nice. I just bought an amp, you know. But I'm going to write it down. Now, you guys know I do like the plexi tone. So, you know, anything that gets more plexi tone is always a good thing. But there is a certain point where it's saturation, too much plexi tone. At this point, I feel that a good Fender amplifier with, you know, these great sounding Marshall type amps is where I need to be. That's kind of the home base for my sound. The NXLS strings are supposed to last longer. I agree. They're just too darn expensive, from my opinion. I'm sure they do sound good, and I'm sure they last longer. I don't have an issue with like a lot of like acidity on my hands. I don't like have overly sweaty hands. If you do, then those strings probably would be a good choice. But for me, I don't feel that's an issue, so I don't want to spend the extra money. I usually go for, you know, the strings that I feel give me good tone and are at a reasonable price. I can get the Ernie Balls strings for what, $6 or $7 or something like that. So William says he has the BEOD Deluxe, lots of gain. Yeah, and there's a trim pot inside there. I think you probably know this, William, but maybe the others don't. There's a trim pot inside of the pedal, so you can actually dial in more or less gain. I kind of keep it on the low side because there's really a lot of gain. So Paul says the Neo Creamback, oddly enough, sounds like a vintage greenback, but it handles 60 watts. I got the info from Pete Thorne, who loves vintage greenbacks, and he too was really surprised. Interesting. So are they more expensive than the greenbacks or less expensive? Because that's the key, right? I know the greenbacks don't typically handle a lot of wattage. So I guess that's where people favor the Neo Creamback because they handle more power. But I'm wondering if they're more expensive. Vox Guitar says, I made a cabinet for a not purchased yet 12-inch speaker. Put an 8-inch full-range speaker rated at 15 watts in it for temporary use. 5-watt amp overdrive is like crazy. Interesting experiment there. My pleasure, Mark. No worries. Mr. Pissy Pants, hey, how's it going? I think younger people who have not been exposed to tube amps are fine with the digital stuff because it's all they know, especially if they've only heard MP3s. Yeah, Dan, I agree, man. I think we had this discussion last week as well. Totally agree with you, man. And I brought up the example of people, let's say of my age, that I've grown up with, you know, the stereo systems, right? Where they all had, you had different components. You had your tape deck, you had your power amplifier, your tuner, your EQ, and really big speakers, full range, you know, speakers that would be playing what was on your turntable. And that stuff sounded so great, so warm and full. And then we went towards CDs because apparently they were going to last forever and they were never going to scratch, and it was going to be, you know, immaculate reproduction of sounds. But it wasn't the same. It wasn't as warm. It wasn't as nice. There was something missing. And I feel like gradually then we're going to MP3s and we're getting into smaller file formats to be compatible and try and get cram as much music on our portable devices. So we're sacrificing sound quality for the ability of being able to have more music available to us. And then we're going to these little portable Bluetooth speakers. And I don't know, it's like we're going backwards, you know? Like if you take one of those speakers and play your MP3 on them and put it next to a system playing, even an average system playing a record today, night and day difference. And that's kind of the equivalent, and that's how I feel, you know, between playing an amp and playing through a multi-effects unit. I mean, it's a facsimile of what you would get, but it's not the actual thing. It's never going to be the full 3D experience, in my opinion. So I agree with you, Dan. Totally. I thought Plexitone was all about the saturation, and it is. But to be able to saturate the Plexitone without a master volume, you got to crank that thing. And if you already have tinnitus, like I do, you have to really seriously take care of your ears. It's glorious when you get into that ballpark, but it's loud. William says, I never even heard how loud my 18-watt Buddha will get. Dude, if you want to talk about loud, when I was making my list, this is my list of the amps that I've had in the past, okay? I was just making the list here. And a lot of them, I would say the majority of the models that I've played with over the years have been Mesa Boogie amps, because I've really tried to like Mesa Boogie amps, and I've discovered that I'm not a Mesa guy. Eventually they might come out with something, but so far they haven't. So if we want to talk loud, one of the first amps that I had was the Mesa Boogie Mark III. This was a 100-watt amp combo. It had a speaker in there. It was a Black Widow. Or was it a Black Shadow? I forget. I think it was a Black Widow. Anyways, this amp is the size of a little bit bigger, I would say, not much bigger than a Fender Princeton, because it's based on the Princeton. It's basically a souped up Princeton. A little bit bigger than this thing. This thing would shatter the windows of your house. It was that loud. I've never heard an amp this loud coming out of a small combo of that size. Incredibly loud. So, you know, you're talking 18-watt Buddha amp. Like, if you ever get a chance to crank the Mark III, just do it for shits and giggles. Just crank it and see how loud these things get. Incredibly loud. Purple Telecaster update. So Seth, yes. So I'm glad you asked that question. I'm still, believe it or not, working on that. I thought I was done. This is the beautiful thing about working with paints and painting your body, your guitar bodies. Sometimes you think you're finished and you're actually not. I painted countless layers or coats of clear on the plexi, the purple Telecaster. I was at the point where I was level sanding it, and I noticed that I wasn't getting the mirror finish that I wanted. So it basically told me I didn't have enough clear coats on it. And I was debating whether or not I would just simply stop there and put the thing together. Because after all, I am aiming for a kind of a relict Telecaster look. So it doesn't have to be flawless. But I really wanted it to be a little bit better than what I was getting. And to be honest with you, a lot of the clear coats that they are selling today, for whatever reason, I think because of COVID, they're running out of the gloss clear. There's satin, and there's like a dull gloss, which is not what I want. So I'm having a hard time finding the clear gloss. Long story short, yesterday I shot another can of clear on the purple Telecaster on the body, and so that needs to now cure for a while, and I might do one final can, and hopefully that'll be it. Hopefully that'll be enough so that I can start just level sanding the whole thing, buffing and polishing it, and putting it together. I'm really, really, really excited to get that thing done. And again, I want to thank Great Lake Custom Colors for, you know, providing some of the great products, and obviously, you know, that beautiful 100-year-old pine body that I'm trying to get put together. So I'm hoping that's going to be done soon, very soon, but it's not done yet. And of course, I don't have all my free time to be putting together that stuff, so it is taking a little longer, and I apologize, but I'm sure that once it's done, it's going to be a great playing and sounding guitar, and I definitely will show you guys the final result and see how everything comes together. I'm pretty excited. Box says, I saw a video detailing Angus Young's rig. Was shocked to hear that it goes through around 50 amps on a tour. I think it's also because he probably is still playing through vintage amps. And, you know, the vintage amps don't necessarily hold up too well. The rigors of the road are not easy on vintage gear. So yeah, that doesn't really surprise me all that much. How many people here are older than the internet? I am, he says. This is Vox Guitars Rock. Well, I was around before the internet. I was around when they're still using BBS, bulletin board services. You guys know that? I don't know how many of you guys were using the bulletin boards, but I was. Black Shadow. Okay, so thanks for correcting me. It's been a while. I didn't remember if it was Black Widow or Black Shadow, but those speakers are like crazy powerful, man. They're huge. That little amp, the Mesa Mark III, weighed a ton. You would look at it and you would say, it's a cute little combo, and you wanted to grab it and just take off with it. It was like a freaking boat anchor. Keith says, I put on the Ernie Ball RPS yesterday. They feel great. I tried them because they were $1 cheaper a pack than all the other Ernie Ball RPS reinforced plain strings. Hey, $1 in your pocket is $1 in your pocket. Put it towards the amp fund. That's what I say. Seth says an 85 watt Fender 210 does it. So Neo is $250 Canadian. It's also only 96 dBs, so that is not loud. Perfect with my 50 watt Plexi, a single 12 and an open back pine cab, the weight of the guitar in a case. Interesting. $250 is not cheap for one speaker. But yeah, if it's not as efficient, that would mean you can crank your Plexi a little louder, get into the sweet spot. Interesting. I'll keep my eyes open for one of those on the used market and maybe eventually snag one of those up, or maybe trade my my cream back for one of those. Doesn't some company make a speaker with a dial on the back that changes efficiency to lower or raise amp max volume? Don't remember where I saw it, but it was a thing. Interesting. If that exists, that's a great idea. I'm not aware of that, but that's a fantastic idea. I wonder why they don't. I haven't heard of them. Maybe it's because they charge too much for them. Quicksilver says, I picked up the NUX Cerberus and a couple of those Joyo pedals, American Sound AC Tone, to run a stereo rig. How do you like the Cerberus? Hobo Bob says, a bit of an odd question. I mentioned in the previous live stream that I was trying to get back into it. Do you have YouTube channels you'd recommend to learn again? Basic stuff for starters. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff out there. It all depends on whether or not you want to learn theory or you just want to learn how to play songs. I think there's one fellow, I think it's Shut Up and Play Your Guitar or something like that. He has a bunch of videos where he's showing you how to play songs. But if you want to learn theory, there's a couple of websites that will allow you to learn that. There's the Berklee site, of course, the Berklee School of Music, but that is expensive if you sign up to their courses. But you can actually do online accredited courses if you're serious about playing music. But if you're not, there's Jam Play. There's a few other ones that will allow you to kind of learn songs and kind of learn a bit of theory, but I've tried a couple of them. I still haven't found one that I really like. Honestly, if you really are serious about playing, I would say seek out a good teacher. It's gonna be expensive. I mean, you're gonna be paying 30, 35 bucks, 40 bucks an hour, or whatever it is, but you will get a lot more out of it, and you will learn technique, theory, you will learn songs, and a good teacher goes a long way. You could supplement that with watching videos and picking stuff up on your own, but if I had to give advice to anybody, it would be really find a good teacher. Hey Keith, thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. I'll put that towards the Marshall Fund. Thank you very much. Randy says, I just picked up a Boss MS3. Very cool so far. Congratulations on that. Boss still makes really good stuff. I have to say, like, even though over time I've been kind of tempted with a lot of the boutique stuff out there. I mean, Boss stuff has been around for decades. It's great. It's solid. A lot of it sounds great. They're not all fantastic, but a lot of them are great, and they're practically indestructible. Yeah, I've heard of Steve as well. Steve Stein. And yeah, you're absolutely right, William. You know what? There's great players out there, but it doesn't necessarily make them great teachers. So you can have a player that really can shred and play a whole bunch of different things, but he has a hard time articulating how to do it and breaking down lessons so you can actually get to the point where you can play like him. So if you're not like a super talented player that picks up things immediately, then it could be more of a challenge. So somebody that knows how to explain is definitely worthwhile without being too boring. Because a lot of the times when I look at some of these videos where people are trying to teach you how to play a certain song, it's so tedious that I click off even before it's finished. Eminence is the company that makes those speakers. It's an attenuator. So it's an attenuator built into a speaker, which is interesting. It doesn't surprise me that it's Eminence that's putting that out, because they have a lot of experience in the field of speakers. A lot of the stuff that Boss makes is sold on the used market all the time. So you can definitely pick up some stuff very inexpensively from Boss. Some of their delay pedals are great. Hoba Bob says I'm the opposite of talented. Cool Tune says, I have a Boss ME75 and been great, never wanting to get rid of it. Yeah. What I started to do, Keith, is I started to buy my packs of strings in the 3-packs, especially now that I haven't had too much opportunity to go out and get strings in stores. I order them sometimes on Amazon, and when you buy a 3-pack or a 5-pack, it's a little less expensive and less packaging too, by the way. So I sometimes do that. So the Delta King 10 does a great job with Aerosmith and classic rock tones. Nice. Anything classic rock, I like. So any amp that gets you into that territory is great, in my opinion. And through the history of amps that I jotted down here, man, I went through them all. I started off with really crappy solid state amps, and almost immediately got into the Mesa stuff, the Mesa stuff. I don't know why. I think at that point maybe I was listening to Santana or something like that, so automatically jumped into there and tried a few of those, and then dabbled in some PV Classic amplifiers like the Classic 50, which was a very good amplifier, by the way. And surprisingly, I didn't play too much with Fender amps. I only recently got into Fender amps, and I kind of overlooked them because I was looking for something heavier. One of the first amps, or the first heads that I got, was a full-fledged JCM 800, which was a monster. Sounded phenomenal, but again, just too darn loud. So it's almost like I went full circle. I went from the Mesa amps, PV amps, bunch of Marshall amps, then tried some boutique amps. I tried the Rocket Retro, which is basically a hand-wired plexi clone. I had tried out the Super Dual Tone, as I mentioned. I had tried out the Fargan Oldie 800, which was also sort of a boutique hand-wired version of the JCM 800. The Egnator stuff, I tried the Rebel. I tried the Supersonic, the bass breaker from Fender recently. But I hadn't really tried too many other Fender amps. I stayed away from the Deluxe. I did try the Hot Rod Deluxe at one point, but I didn't play the standard Deluxe. I played around with the bass breaker, the Bassman at one point, but it was just too loud, too aggressive for what I was looking for. Anyways, it's funny how sometimes you got to go full circle to find what you're after. And then when you finally realize that, you had what you were looking for all along, it's one of those, those aha moments where it's like, man, I should have stopped looking a long time ago. But every time I say that, there's always something new that pops up. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say that. I keep on getting questions on the Katana. The head versus the Yamaha THR or the MG30. So the MG30, I can't comment on that one. I haven't tried that one yet. The Katana is great if you're looking at a unit that you can use to practice at home. The Yamaha THR stuff is good too, from what I heard. I'm just not convinced about the smaller speakers on the THR units as opposed to the bigger speakers on the Katana. Probably the Katana would be better. The THR is more expensive for what it is. I feel like the Katana, you could possibly take it and at least bring it to a gig, whereas the THR probably not. And obviously the MG30 is really a multi-effects unit, so you'd be looking at playing that through maybe an FR speaker that's powered or something like that. So you get more flexibility out of some than the others, but generally I would say most people are pretty happy with the Katana. It all really depends on how you want to use them. It's not an easy question for me to answer. Depends on how you want to use them. So guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. It's 2 hours and 13 minutes I've been blabbing, and I think we had a great chat this weekend. I'm looking forward to next Sunday, where we will be announcing the winner of the contest. So once again, guys, for those of you tuning in last minute, please check out my last video. We're giving away a chance to win the Mighty Plug from NUX. Great piece of used gear. Just follow the instructions on the video for a chance to win that unit. And somebody's going to walk away a happy winner next week on Sunday. So tune in once again next Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we will be announcing the winner. In the meantime, guys, I want everybody to stay healthy and happy, and don't spend too much time talking and worrying about gear, and spend more time playing, I think you're going to get a lot more out of it. Leave the gear chat to me. I'll take the hit for the team so that you guys can practice and become better players while I, cork sniff gear for you guys. And, my playing will suffer because of it. But thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Addicted to Gear. Looking forward to talking to you guys again next week. Have a great rest of the weekend, a great week. And guys, like I always say, stay tuned and keep rocking. You don't want to just do one or the other. You don't want to just rock. You got to stay tuned, tune up your guitar, and rock. You want to do both at the same time, right? But all jokes aside, guys, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate the support. Thank you for the guys that have chipped in with the super chats. And at the same time, guys, check out my other videos. Don't forget to subscribe. And see you all next time for another edition of Addicted to Gear Live. That's it for now, guys. Cheers. Have fun. Talk to you soon.